Hi everyone, welcome to another live lesson of Spanish Pod 101. And this lesson, the topic is mnemonics, so it's a bit different maybe from the topics that we've been having these past few weeks. So it's not strictly a grammar topic or like a vocabulary topic or anything, but I think that these mnemonic techniques might help you to like learn faster Spanish. So I think it's important to learn a little bit about them, and if you think that they might be useful for you, you can incorporate them, and then like with the vocabulary you learn on the following lessons, you can use them and you can memorize them like a lot quicker. So I hope that you're looking forward to it. And also, well, it's obviously not only for language learning, so maybe you can also help learn something here that can help you with some other subjects or topics that you're interested in. So well, we are gonna wait a little bit until some people join on Facebook and on YouTube. Remember that if you have any question or any comment you want to make throughout the lesson, you can write your comments and I will be looking at them. So I hope that I know the answer to the questions you have and I can give them to you. I see that there are already some people joining us. Gary Raghvendra, I'm sorry if I cannot pronounce it well. Daniel, Mitu, Eric, Cody. Oh, there are a lot of people. Thank you everyone for joining. Nathan, Jahed, Amani, Jimin. Thank you very much everyone for joining in. I don't know like from where you all are, like what time it is in your country, but thank you very much for like deciding to be here with me for half an hour to learn some Spanish. From South Arabia, Amani, welcome. Bonaire, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. Hello everyone. So as I said, we are gonna learn mnemonics. I hope it's like something that you're interested in, something that is helpful to you. So okay. From Estonia also, Valencia also. There are also people already living in Spain. Michelle, thank you very much for joining. Okay. So Nathan from Ireland, Canada. Wow, you're from all over the world. Thank you very much for joining in. So, like before starting with the lesson, I guess you all know that this week is Black Friday finally. So instead of spending all your money buying new clothes, maybe you can use it for something like a bit more useful that is going to help you learn Spanish a lot quicker. So if you click the link below, you can have a 51% off of the basic, premium, and premium plus subscriptions on the website. So take advantage of this and you will get a lot of material like audio and video lessons that can help you learn Spanish a lot faster. So as I always say, learning a language is something you have to like do even if it's not a lot of time, but you have to dedicate like some time every day. So with this you'll have a lot of material to not only study for half an hour once a week, but keep learning every day. So now also from Argelia, Ecuador, Barcelona. Wow, it's amazing, like you're all from all over the globe. For today's lesson, if you want to be able to memorize Spanish words easier, We are gonna tell you how to do so by some association and visualization techniques. So yeah, stick with us and you'll learn how to do so. So we are gonna cover the following topics. So first of all, for if some of you don't know yet, like we are gonna explain what mnemonics are. Then we are gonna talk a little bit about one of the techniques that is called memory palace. Then we are gonna teach you about another technique that is by association, associating so different words, like either in the same language or in your language and the language you're learning. Then we're gonna see the pros and cons for using these techniques. They might be helpful for some things, but maybe they are not gonna completely, how to say, like you have to put an extra effort to really like remember the words you learn through these techniques on the long term. So we are gonna talk a little bit about that. Well, then we are gonna invite you to get started using them, like talking, like, yeah, with an exercise, with some practice. So, what are mnemonics? So, mnemonics are methods that are used to help you memorize based on either association. So, as I said, like maybe associating, like in the case of learning a new language, maybe words in that language you're learning, but also maybe you can associate these words with words in your like mother tongue. Visualization is another technique, so you can use the words you want to learn to imagine in your head, like some maybe strange situation that can help you like memorize all of them. And imagination, well, a bit similar to visualization, creating maybe some stories or imagining situations that are gonna help you to memorize them. So these are all based on the assumption that it's easier to learn new information by associating with what you already know. So you are using what you already know, and with that you are gonna memorize new things like a lot easier than starting from scratch. And because of this, mnemonics are very personal. So it depends on what you know, and it's not like you can copy someone else's mnemonic technique. Maybe it helps, but normally it's better to create your own because it will stick a lot better. So yeah, that's an important thing to know. So there are a lot of methods like based on this concept, a lot of them, and maybe some of them are more suitable for language learning, but maybe also another is more suited to, I don't know, like learn things in a particular order or memorize numbers, or who knows. I mean, there are mnemonics techniques for everything, but well, some of them are storytelling, creating a story based on the things you want to memorize, memory palace. We are gonna see that in more detail right after. Then associating words either by their sounds or their spellings, and also acronyms like taking the letter like this word start with and putting them together, and you can create like a sentence that helps you memorize them. So we are gonna start with one of the techniques called memory palace. For this technique, you're gonna have to, it takes some work, to be honest. Like prior to memorizing to be able to memorize all the words, you have to make a bit of like homework before that, but after that it's gonna be a lot easier to remember the words, so I mean it's worth it. So first, you have to create a visual map of a familiar place. And it's better if you can draw it. And it has to be a place that you know by heart, like for example, I don't know, your house or your school, your workplace, I don't know, maybe even like train stations, I don't know. But it has to be a place you really, really know well, so that you're gonna make sure you're not gonna forget anything about it. Then what you have to do is imagine a path in that map, so you can see yourself walking through that. I don't know if it's your house, like maybe first like you enter, and then if you have the kitchen on the right, you have to imagine yourself entering the kitchen and imagine the room, and then well, going all through that place, and then you have to identify and number each room. So it has always had to be the same path. So you always have to go first, I don't know, to the kitchen, and then to your room, and then to the toilet. It has to be always the same path. If you want to be able to, so maybe the rooms are, if it's only rooms you're remembering, it's a limited number. But what you can do is maybe you enter the kitchen. Then you can create like little stations, like memory stations inside the kitchen. So for example, you first go to the table, so that would be a station, and then you go to the cupboard and open it, and then you go to the sink to wash the dishes. So you can create like different stations inside that room, and that makes you have more like memory slots. Well, it's useful also to link a character to each of the room, so you can interact with each situation you imagine. So if you're gonna create like some weird stories in each room to remember the words that you want to memorize, like you can create some character or something that is going to make easier to create these stories and to memorize them. So, and then once you have like all these very well like memorized, like you have to add familiar images, stories to each room related to the words and phrases that you want to memorize. So yeah, that's the most creative part. You have to imagine yourself going through all of the rooms and going through all of these memory stations and creating stories or situations that are gonna help you learn all these words. Since it's a bit, this technique is a bit time consuming, maybe if you use it for every single word that you want to learn, it's going to take a lot of time. So, I mean, I think it's better to use it for words that are particularly difficult to remember or that are very important or like key words or phrases. Then also it's important to write down the list of all those words that you want to remember through this technique by categories on a spreadsheet, so that you know, like you don't forget after creating all this plan, like what you want to learn, and you can always like take a look at it and go back to it. So yeah. Well, what is the really important part of this is after doing all this work, you have to practice. Like just by doing it, if you don't go like over and over it, you're going to forget it. So yeah, the best thing is look away from that list you created with all the words you want to learn, and you have to try going through this mental map like room by room in your head. It could be nice if you could like write down all the words that you are going to each room, like the kitchen, table, and I don't know, created some story, that's something that is on the table to remember the word that you want to memorize. So you write that word, and then once you complete and have been to all of these rooms, you can compare the list you've just created, like by the words with the word that you were memorizing, with the list that you made at the beginning. So you compare and you see if there's something that I don't know, the spelling of some word wasn't right, or maybe you forgot that there was some object or some word or phrase in one of the stations. So this step is very important, because if you don't repeat this process, it's difficult to, just by creating the map, to memorize everything. So, yeah. And also, like, very important, after practicing this path, if these words are just live in this imaginary palace you've created, that's not going to be of much use to you, like when learning a new language. So the important thing is that you have to try identifying all these words that you have included in your list. You have to try to, expose yourself to media, for example, or to just by talking to other people or reading books. You have to expose yourself to the new language, and you have to be able to pick up these words. And the more you see these words in other contexts, the more you are going to be able to fix these words in your memory. So it's not only about living in your imaginary palace. You have to then go out and try using also these words, speaking or writing in the target language. Because I don't know, with languages, for me at least, it's a lot easier to understand maybe things like by listening or reading. But then when it's me that I have to, either speak or write something, it's a lot more difficult. So it can get a bit passive, like you're just learning to understand words, but then you don't have the courage, or you're not used to using them on a daily basis. So it's you really need to take into account this step, and using all these words that you have memorized, you have to learn how to use them with other words and in sentences, in real life. So someone is asking, Abdelatif, I'm sorry if I cannot pronounce it correctly, is asking if I could give an example of memory palace technique. So, for example, if you were learning, for example, the colors, and you could imagine yourself like going to one of these rooms and going to all these stations that there are inside your room. And for example, if the first, as I said before, like you enter the kitchen, and the first station is your table, you can imagine the table being red and saying rojo, rojo. So mesa roja, for example, like red table. And then you go to the cupboard and you open it, and there's I don't know, a purple what something, a purple bowl. So you remember, like you repeat to yourself, like cuenco morado, cuenco morado. So you imagine all these things, like you create objects or stories inside this room, and you go over it again and again. You can associate the words to these stations and objects you create, and it will be easier to memorize them. So I know it's this technique is very time consuming. So as I said, like it's not like you should use it for every single word you want to learn, but if there's something that you are particularly struggling with, it can be useful. So yeah, we finished with the memory palace technique, and now we are gonna see another technique, learning by association. So I think this technique might be maybe even more, at least it's not as time consuming as the memory palace technique. So maybe it's easier like for you to include this a lot quicker when you are learning a new language. Because, well, this association technique means that you will be learning words that, for example, begin with the same letter. So, for example, we have here common verbs beginning with C. So you make that list and you try to study all of them together, and it's going to be a lot easier to remember them. Because you can also like maybe mix a bit of this technique, like having all the verbs that start with C with, for example, a storytelling technique, and you can imagine some character, like, for example, we have here comer, which is to eat, caminar, which is to walk, and correr, which is to run. So you can imagine some character who is like eating while he walks, and then as soon as he finishes it, he starts running. Or you can create some story that helps you also learn better these verbs that all begin with the same letter. So you are using different techniques, association and storytelling, and in that way it will be a lot more powerful, this technique. You can also learn words that sound alike. For example, well, this is kind of sound alike and belong. The third one is words that belong to the same category. We have here an example of words related to pan, bread. So instead of learning these words like separately, you can make your list and learn that pan is bread, and then panadero is baker, and panadería is bakery. So all of them start with pan, and all of them are related to bread. So it will be a lot easier to memorize them at the same time. So I think that could be very useful when learning languages. And then the last technique is acronyms. I personally use this quite a lot. Maybe not that much with languages when I was in high school, but geography and history, I remember like learning the rivers in Spain with acronyms, and for dates or for places, or I used to create like some sentences or words or so. But yeah, it's also useful for language learning. For example, if you have like these like packages of words that are related between them, for example, the seasons of the year or the cardinal points, I think you say. So these are words that you always kind of use together while they are related to each other. So you take the first letter of each word. You have like this new word that doesn't really mean anything, but it's a lot easier, like if you remember this, to then remember each of these single words. So in this case, we have the seasons: primavera, spring; verano, summer; otoño, autumn; invierno, winter. And you take PVOI, you can remember more easily the order and the words themselves. And here we have another example with norte, north, sur, south, este, east, oeste, west. It would be NSEO. You can create then a sentence like using these letters also to help you memorize this, because NSEO doesn't really make a lot of sense by itself. But yeah. So we are gonna see now some pros and cons. Some pros is that a method to catalyze learning. So it's like a first step to start memorizing this vocabulary. But a cons is that it's a short-term strategy. So as we said, you need to put that into practice and take it to the real world later to be able to really memorize them. Another pro is that it's useful for learning difficult words, but a con is that it doesn't guarantee understanding. So you're relying a lot on like just memorization, but maybe you are not going that deep into the meaning or the origin or anything like that. Another pro is that with practice, the material learned will not be forgotten. Like as we said, it's very important that last step of practicing and repeating it and taking it to the real world. And a con is a bit related to what we mentioned before, like the material learned is lacking context. So it's very important that then you take all these words into your daily conversations, and also that you see some media and you kind of see how they are used in context, like in relation to other words and in particular situations. That's it, yeah. Now we are gonna invite you to start using these techniques. So yeah, as I mentioned before, these are very personal. So it's not like I can tell you a particular technique. It has to be you, the one creating your own technique, depending on what you already know. If not, it's not going to be really useful. So, a way to use these techniques to learn Spanish is first get familiar with the grammars. So you want to know some basic rules before starting to using them. And then you can use these mnemonics techniques that we've talked about to memorize 30 words, for example. And then, as we said, you have to watch and listen to media in target language, in this case Spanish, and identify those words that you've learned so that you can really memorize them. And then it's kind of repeating this process. So you can use mnemonics again to memorize another 30 words once you have really memorized the first ones. And then, you have to practice, you have to listen to media in Spanish and identify those words, those 30 words. And then you have to try. So that doesn't mean that you can forget about the first 30 words that you learned. You have to try recalling the 60 words that you have learned so far. And as I said, you need to practice yourself and try to use them in daily conversations, speaking, writing, so that you can make sure that they are really sticking. Once that you have this basic grammar and now some vocabulary, you can go back to studying more grammar, for example, verbs conjugations. Yeah, as I said, it's a matter of practice. So repeating and repeating this process, and you'll get better in Spanish in no time. That was the lesson for today. I hope that you learned something useful. I wanted to remind you all that you can click on the link below and have for Black Friday a 51% off of the basic, premium, and premium plus subscriptions, and through them you can get a lot of audio material, videos, PDF with vocabulary, so you can accelerate your learning and keep learning the language every day. And for next week, we are gonna learn how to say hello. So very different from this week's topics, but yeah, it's not only going to be hola. We are gonna teach you some more, so I hope that you're looking forward to it. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining today, and I hope to see you next week also here. Bye. So very different from this week's topics, but thank you very much.